counted. And my questions have evolved each time. And I felt like that night I didn't get all my questions answered, and I wasn't comfortable voting yes. I was not comfortable without getting more answers. And you may say, well, you had your chance before. That might be true, but there is a learning curve, and I'm learning as I go. And each week I come up with, perhaps new questions. And that night I had more questions, and I did not feel like they were being answered. They were deferred to a memo in the future, and I was not going to vote yes.
So, can you be more specific about what you felt was a problem in the budget?
I felt like the budget, I didn't get my questions answered with regard to our student-teacher ratio. We got a lot of information the week before, a special presentation all put in a nice graph and everything, specifically measuring or showing how many administrators we have to the ratio of students compared to surrounding areas. But then when I asked for that same information for teaching, what's our ratio of teacher to student, that was deferred. And that's one of the main reasons I want to know that. I want to know that if we're increasing our budget, are we putting more teachers in the classroom? Because that's what I really want. I love the programs that we're supporting and all those programs in the budget that were highlighted. I'm a supporter of them, and I love them. AVID and dual language and all these various programs that help so many students. But I still feel like we're forgetting the core group of the teacher-student ratio, and no one's answered that question for me.
So, I guess what I'm wondering, because this is important for me as a board member to know this as well, are you looking for a certain ratio to say, or was that kind of like a done deal you wouldn't have voted for in a minute? I want to know where administration would have needed to go to help you, because if I'm for a teacher-student ratio, lower class sizes as well.
I don't have a specific amount in mind. I wanted that information, and I felt like I didn't have it.
Because it wasn't available right then and there.
Right.
It could have been available.
Had I come up with the question ahead of time, yes.
Right. So, I guess to me, I hear where you're coming from. I get a little concerned that when we have to have the budget voted for that night, that question is an important question.
It was, but I didn't come up with it soon enough. But our goal is not to vote yes, 7-0. That's not my goal here.
It's more so that we can all know where each other's coming from.
Well, I don't feel that we should be talking to each other ahead of time about what we're going to vote either.
That wasn't my...
So my point is, if you didn't get a sense, you may not have gotten a sense of where I was at, because from one meeting to the next, I hadn't made up my mind yet. So you may not know until that night, and that's okay with me.
That's right.
It's okay with me too. I guess I'm just, for something that serious, if there's something that you're concerned about, maybe I want to be concerned about that too.
And I will ask it as soon as I have the question. I didn't purposely wait till the third showing to ask the question. It only is that I'm evolving in this process. I'm a new board member, and the questions come as they come. And I asked it that night.
So, starting with the committee meeting, I started raising questions and concerns that I had about the increased spending. To me, it seemed like the spending was just increasing because the revenues could increase, right? The state was giving us more money, the federal government was giving us more money, and we were planning on taxes going up, or we were budgeting based on taxes going up. But to me, we need to justify the money before we spend it, before we approve it. So I asked questions at the committee that I didn't feel I got a good answer for. I asked questions at several times here at the board meeting that it was presented. What is the return on investment going to be? What's the improvement going to be? What are we going to do to improve the results in the district, and how is this going to help spending this additional dollars? I never got a satisfactory answer to me to make me feel comfortable in spending it. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, the state contributions to us are going up substantially, above and beyond what they have ever been, by over $20 million. What are we doing to plan if this goes back to where it was, and if we do all this increase in spending, whether it's hiring people, primarily hiring people, how are we gonna account for that? You know, we need to plan ahead. So that was some of my concern there at the last meeting, but even leading up to it, I had concerns all along. I mean, I'm happy to explain why I vote on anything, yes or no. I mean, I think it's a little odd that I need to. I'm not asking anybody that voted yes, that they need to justify why they voted yes.
A collaborative group, and that's why I'm normally, and you don't have to do anything, and I'm not even looking for agreement necessarily. That's not why I'm bringing this up. It's just helpful to know, because as 7 heads, we all may be thinking differently about certain situations. There have been questions that have come up from other board members that I hadn't thought of. And it just kind of, I mean, I knew that there were some concerns, but I didn't know that the concerns were there enough to have a no vote. That was the confusion that I had at the end, my misunderstanding. So I don't necessarily consider having some concerns of saying no, that this isn't going to go through. That's my opinion.
Sure, but we should vote our own conscience.
Exactly. I really appreciate that, and I guess sometimes when it does seem like there might be something out of the blue, I would, if I was gonna vote no or something different or want some changes before, I would enter that into the discussion. So that's just my point of view, because I want you all to know.
I feel like I was, but.
I think my personal feeling is that it's very important for us to be a collaborative group. So I can't tell you how many times people have asked questions that I couldn't figure out how to ask to get at that. I needed to get at a certain amount of information that I couldn't figure out how to get at. And I get a little stage fright up here. So I try to focus, which I'm not doing right now. But it's important to me to hear everybody's questions, because I agree with Maria. This is maybe something I need to be worried about too. If there's something, and if I did not get the feeling prior to that night that there was a big issue from the questions that you'd asked. I did not see that you were unsatisfied with your answers.
I don't feel like I ever got answers to many of my questions. Certainly the ones that I got weren't satisfactory, and in return on investment questions that I asked. But obviously that's something that's I'm going to know in my mind when it's time to vote, if by that moment in time, if it has been satisfactory. To you it was, and to everybody that voted yes, their questions were satisfied, and that's okay. And they
But
don't
there's
have to
stuff that
justify
we
that.
don't always think of. I mean, I'm not perfect,
Absolutely.
so I
That's
need
why
to
I raised the
know.
questions.
That's why we need all of us.
Absolutely, and I raised the
Can't function
question.
without it. But I didn't ever feel like that you felt there was anything missing from that. So I didn't feel any anxiety about it at all. I thought, okay, we can go for it. That's okay. I'm not an expert on accounting principles or anything. I'm an editor. I find typos.
Right, I'm not an expert either.
So-
You know, I just was raising questions that were
Stuff
concerning
like the
me.
budget's important.
Absolutely.
Like Tracy said last time, this stuff is massively important. We don't do anything with this lightly. So there's questions and stuff. I would love to hear that you had issues with that before they came up and you had to vote no.
Yeah, I definitely felt that they were raised, but maybe I'll raise them all more.
That would be
next time,
appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? I just want to mention the Carroll Stream, the Village of Carroll Stream had 2 meetings since our last meeting. One was their Shape of Carroll Stream, which is a cable televised where they have all the board presidents from all the taxing bodies, and it's on their cable station locally. And that was a real good meeting. They give each of us 5 minutes to update everybody on what's going on in our taxing body. And then they open email, phones, and they have people sitting in the audience asking questions. So it turned out real nice, and then we had our intergovernmental meeting at Carroll Stream also. And both went real well, and there's a lot going on in Carroll Stream.
And all the homecomings happened and there were no incidents? that we know of. And Channing had Fiesta Channing, and that was what.
Anything else? Okay. CAC, is there, no? Okay. Their meeting though is Thursday night, correct? 7 o'clock out in high school.
I will be there.
Other business, individual student disciplinary matters.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, administration is recommending that student B be expelled for the current academic year, 2013.
Okay, could I have a motion to accept the recommendation of administration to expel student B for the remainder of the 2013-2014 school year?
Sure, so moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sonia-Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Napolitano?
Yes.
Ms. Noland?
Yes.
Mrs. Schroeder?
Yes.
Mrs. Bidelman?
Yes.
Madam President?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Work session?
On the work session, we have two items. Number one, for letter A, is indemnification agreement between School District U-46 and the Village of Bartlett. Mr. Kidding, Chief Operations Officer, is here to present that item to the board and answer any board questions.
This intergovernment agreement arose because there was a developer in Bartlett that questioned the land values being applied for the developer donation part of the agreement, in which all the taxing bodies benefit from when new developments are created through the permitting process. So what they had done, the developer, they went and hired someone to do a reappraisal of the property, and then submitted that to the Village of Bartlett. What the Village of Bartlett then did in response was hire their own appraiser to go out and perform an appraisal. The end result they decreased the value by about $40,000. So what that precipitated was that their developer donation ordinance needed to be updated in conjunction with us. So we reviewed it, our attorneys reviewed it. And the indemnification agreement, what that does in essence is it protects the Village of Bartlett in case there's any action by a third party regarding the ordinance and the developer donation dollars that are conveyed to the school district through building new property and developing properties within the Bartlett Court. Could you answer any questions?
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? And this has been looked at by our lawyers.
Yes.
So somebody else asked if he's,
I'm not sure what your question is, but while
Go
you're
for
trying
it.
to get it, maybe this is it. In the bottom of the memo, it talks about, the district respectfully requested that the land values be examined frequently, and it's something the village had confirmed or agreed to that. Were there any sort of a timeline around how often frequently would be?
No, I think it'll depend on what the market bears. In other words, if values start to change direction and start to increase again, then the time would be to look at it again. I would guess it would probably be at least a couple of years. The last time this was updated was 2007.
So if things move in an overall setting, then
Yeah,
then we'll-
I think on a more macro scale, then
Sure.
maybe we may ask for a request for reval.
so this is gonna affect the taxes on that property.
On the development, yes. And what each taxing, like the library district and park district does, it'll affect everybody.
The question that I had was, do you know anything about how they came to their conclusions about the rise in student population? That they were citing that, they've done some research and this is where
And
the
some of that-
projections are?
Yeah, some of that language is pretty old because it hadn't changed from the 2007 ordinance. So